Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we are here for another episode of Fintech, now Fintech and Retail Friday, and I'm here with Vice President and Principal Analyst Melody Brew. How are you?
Good, doing good. I'm really glad it's Friday, and I'm really glad it's now not just FinTech Friday, but Retail Tech Friday as well.
Exactly. And, congratulations on picking that up. There's a lot of similarities, but there are differences between the two lanes. But it is interesting how many retail customers are using fintech for many different applications. So, and as
Yeah,
you have told me, with the dawn of the super app, where everything revolves around payments, some way, shape, or form, and whether the entryway is buying something, social media, it just doesn't matter. But I love it. So we have a great episode here. We're going to be talking Apple's fintech future, buy now, pay later at the pump. See, you've trained me. Kroger's AI solution based on NVIDIA technology, and the acronym of the week, which I have put into an acronym, the AOTW, BOPIS. I did not cheat. I have no idea what this is, but I cannot wait to hear this. So let's just jump right in. We've got Apple, who has been um, really sneaking in on the financial situation here, kind of crawling there, buying not just apps, but hard goods, credit cards, all this stuff is going on. What's
yep.
going on here, Mel?
So I think, we go back to January when Tim Cook announced that, services was one of their most important growth areas and that they're investing in innovation across all of their services business. Really, one of them that they're really focusing on is the financial sector. And just, I guess it was last week, they acquired Credit Kudos, which is a UK company that's very similar to Plaid, an open banking solution where consumers can permission their data to be used. And it sort of connects, apps and financial services. And it's a, no one ever knows why Apple does the things they do, all like very clearly, right? Because they make several acquisitions a week. Sometimes they're kept really quiet. Maybe it could be, because they're trying to buy the technology. Maybe they're trying to squish somebody else's technology. Maybe they're just doing it, for talent acquisition, for whatever it is. But this really, for me, signifies that they're really kind of making this bigger push into fintech.
Yeah.
And a couple of interesting things here. One is Apple sort of closed off their open banking policies last year. They said, we're not allowing third-party apps to connect. So this is sort of a departure from that, where they're saying, okay, well, we don't know yet what they're doing with it, but the purchase of this Credit Kudos company shows that there's some open banking play here somehow.
Yeah.
So my guess is that this is their way to get into the UK, probably with the Apple Card, probably with a number of different fintech services that they can provide, knowing that having all of this access to people's data, it's probably going to make a bit of a shift in their open banking policies here. There are different laws in the UK than there are here in regards to open banking.
That's right.
Um, but yeah, I think that, they paid $150 million for this company. Plaid, I think, is now valued in like the billions, as you will remember from, one of our early podcasts, early on, early last year, I guess. Visa tried to acquire Plaid. That deal ended up not happening, and it was actually really a great thing for Plaid because their business just went, you know, gangbusters. And what Visa was going to acquire them for and what they're now valued at, it's just a massive difference. So, I think there's a lot of possibilities happening here. We're seeing Apple come in and doing all of these things, right? There's Apple Pay, there's the Apple Card, there's now Tap to Pay, which kind of competes with Block, which used to be Square. And now Apple has this Project Breakout, which is kind of their, I guess not so secret because the street reported it, but it's their project to kind of eliminate some of their fintech partners and bring all of that technology in-house. So I think, we could see Apple really becoming a major player in the financial services sector.
Yeah, they certainly have the balance sheet for it. They have the consumer trust, right?
Yes. Yep.
And they have the technology and the security to make it happen. And it is funny how either you're starting in fintech and going somewhere else, or you're using something as a vehicle, and then ultimately you end up in fintech. There's a
Mhm.
lot of money to be made here. So,
Yeah.
and Apple really does need to grow its other businesses before the next generation of its big bang products come out, and that's automotive. And whether they're the ultimately the living room for a self-driving car, and it's an Apple experience. There's also the augmented reality portion of it. But before they get there, I mean, they already dominate. They have 80% of the profits in the smartphone market already,
Right.
and they're growing in the PC market with their new MacBooks with the M1, which they're 11% today. They're probably going to get to, they want to get to 30%, but this is just another way to not only increase profits, but also increase the stickiness of their platform. So,
Right. And I think you got it right exactly, is that they are trusted. And there's this whole, stigma around big tech getting into finance, but Apple has really stayed away from that, that big trust sort of data, or big tech data trust issue. They've actually just gone right up against it and said,
yeah,
like, as you know, they said to the FBI, we're not unlocking phones, even when there's criminal activity. They're going to protect their users' data. The Apple Card, they don't share data. That's issued through Goldman Sachs. They have an agreement with Goldman Sachs that Goldman Sachs will not share that data.
yeah,
So, I mean, even when you look at the physical card, there's no number on the card. There's very much of a privacy and security sort of safety layer there that the consumer feels, on top of the UX being consistent throughout everything. So, think about it. If you're used to, downloading an app or using an app, whatever it is that you're doing on your Apple products, if they make a loan application as seamless as they make doing anything else that you do on any of your devices that is seamless across any device, that's a no-brainer for people, right? Like, if your grandma can send a text message and create an email and use a Word doc or whatever, do any of the things on an Apple device, that experience is going to be the same in their financial services. So I think they're really smart to do it, and I think they definitely, they have all the resources to do it.
yeah. Let's hit the next topic here, and that is fill now, pay later, which is essentially buy now, pay later at the pump. And given gas prices, I think have doubled in the past 18 months. We have a
It's
lot of
insane.
work. We have a lot of work to do here, and you couldn't imagine that buy now, pay later that might have been used for a white good or consumer electronics like a TV would be have to be used at the gas pump. So what's going on here, Mel?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. Gas prices are insane. Zip and Klarna, I think maybe some others, but those two in particular have introduced a buy now, pay later at the pump. So it's 4 payments over 6 weeks, so people can split their payments. I think it's Chevron and Texaco. So I think there's some good in this, right? Like, gas prices are crazy, but people still have to get places. But there's also the aspect of, like, how far is too far when we come to this buy now, pay later stuff? I mean, are we getting people into a position of unmanageable debt? So one of the big issues in buy now, pay later is returns. Well, you can't return gas. So
Right.
you can't come and take it back if they don't make a
Yeah.
payment. So if somebody, needs the gas, but they're not able to make a payment, this is just going to damage their credit. We're putting people who are in sort of already a precarious situation financially in a worse situation if everything can be delayed. If it's, I think there's a lot of fintech solutions that offer, advances on earned wages, things like that. That to me seems like maybe a safer bet when you're thinking about paying for your gas later. But there's, we saw this happening with travel when people wanted to get back to traveling when, the lockdowns sort of got lifted. Now we're seeing it with gas. I mean, what's next? Like, what what can we add here? So I do think, there's the good and the bad in it. There's the bad that there's the debt issue that people are just racking up more debt, and they are seeing that a good portion of the people who use these buy now pay later services get behind on, one or two payments. But then on the upside to that, this is sort of separate from the gas thing. And we've talked about this a few times. And I've been saying this is a big problem that has to be solved, is now some of these buy now, pay later companies have made agreements with some of the credit reporting agencies where they are reporting not just the bad credit, but the good. So
Yeah.
before it was, they're only reporting. So there's no credit check when you actually, apply for the installment loan. So no impact on your credit there. It was just downside. So if you don't make a payment, you're dinged. Well, now a bunch of them, Experian is one, that they now will report the good payments. So there is the upside there that they're helping people to build credit. And I heard somebody from Experian talking the other day on a Lend It Fintech webinar that it is marked differently on the credit report. So it's kind of like that boost credit product where you can boost your credit report if you are paying your electricity bills on time, but that's not something
Yeah.
that's traditionally reported to the credit agencies. So I do like that they are now reporting to credit agencies and giving people a chance to build their credit if they're using these services. That's likely for a reason because of cash flow. But if they're reporting good behavior, it's helping people to build credit and not rely on multiple ways to finance things like gas.
Yeah. It kind of it feels like by the way, this is just a feeling, not based on data. And I know that's dangerous for analysts, but I think the most experienced analysts are good because they have a combination of data and instinct and history. And it feels like we're just getting into a weird place right now with all this lending. I do really like the idea of getting credit for something other than the way that credit agencies look at your credit. I mean,
Yes.
years ago, I would pay in cash everywhere. I had no credit. I thought I was being a good Midwestern boy by not having any credit card debt.
Yeah.
Okay. And I bought my cars with cash. I was kind of forced into buying a house with cash once when I started up my business. Right. So I literally had no debt. And guess what? I had no credit. I couldn't even
Right.
get a credit card.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Yet I was a good person in terms I had no credit, but now I get hints from uh, it was maybe it's Experian. I forget which one of the big three said, "Hey, instantly increase your credit rating by XX points by telling us your energy bills that you
Mhm.
make."
Yeah.
Okay, and that's one way to get a quick improvement.
Mhm.
What I hope this doesn't turn into necessarily, though, is a social score that they're doing in China, which is, um, scoring you based on. I mean, let's take this to the next, moment. Um, those people who go to bed at 9 o'clock, or those who are in their home by 10, as opposed to those who stay out at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? They find a correlation between people who like to party and outside and not being able to pay their bills on time, right? And this is the type of thing that they're doing in China, which is they have a social score. They monitor basically everything. Not sure when do you go to bed, but you can imagine where this goes. I got an ad on my phone last night for special insurance based on what the BMI was,
Yeah.
that they would track you. Very similar to the human version of the car tracker, where you can you put the car tracker in there for a week and you
Oh, yeah.
get a lower bill. But it is fascinating and a little bit scary on how far it could go. But
Right. Well, as we were talking about the Whoop, which I'm wearing and I'm
yeah,
obsessed with and I love, but I'm giving them a whole lot of data. I am giving
right,
them, they know what time I go to bed, they know what time I get up, they know how many breaths per minute I take, they know my heart rate, they know all of those things. If that turns into something that I can use, for cheaper health insurance or something like that, great. But it again, it sort of goes back to that permission data. That should
right.
absolutely be data that we only give permission to share. And like I mentioned in our last podcast, even monetized.
Right.
If you want all that data about me and I'm, let's just say I'm an average, 50-year-old woman with 4 children, and you can use my data to make predictions on what other people in my demographic want to do, want to spend, want to buy, all of those things, then that's a way to monetize. You can monetize that data. I think I think that's
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And it also kind of puts a highlight on even Apple with the trust,
Right.
You ever wonder why they spend, 5% of every announcement they make talking about security? I think this is one of them, and particularly on the Apple Watch. So
Yeah.
good stuff. So hey, let's move forward to a big retail moment. This is part of the retail tech that we're gonna start talking about on here. What's going on with Kroger and NVIDIA?
So this was, let's see, was that last week or the week before? Again, I'm in like a time warp right now. So Kroger and NVIDIA just announced this, basically like a AI lab, digital twin store simulation lab experiment, which I think is happening in one of their warehouses in Cincinnati. Um, but this digital twin store simulation is really interesting to me, and I'm sure you've seen this, in other arenas. But when you look at it in terms of grocery and freshness and things like that, it's a really cool concept. Basically, it's this whole like last mile delivery, to maintain the product freshness from farm to plate, farm to table, whatever you want to talk, But kind of like I think their goal of this is sort of to increase the efficiency in the process in the stores using these digital twins, which are basically, just virtual models designed to reflect what's actually happening. And I think the difference here is like the digital twin is showing what's actually happening, not what you're predicting to happen.
Right.
And then I also think, we've talked about this off podcast, but this is another interesting thing for me is that there's the brands that are known for innovation and, even like when we talk about the fintech brands and the retail brands, these are like the kind of sexy brands. And then, you don't really think of like actually one of the companies that we talked about, iFi, the store that does the autonomous checkout, they're also an NVIDIA partner. So, you kind of think like you don't see the like kind of the hero behind the hero. The one brand gets all the recognition and all the flash, but when we really kind of I think that's what one really interesting thing about our firm is that I see, what like the hardware guys and the security guys and the 5G guys and what they're doing. And, to me, some of that stuff can seem really dry and everything very like, it's not as sexy as fintech and retail, but the fact is they're working together and they're doing these things. And that's what's powering it behind the scenes. And I think, they don't always get the recognition for that. You've been working with these companies for decades, so that they're, these are not the brands that you see in the headline of launching a new really cool retail concept store, right?
Yeah, it's amazing what AI has brought to retail. Video is a great example where they want to optimize the layout of a store. So what they do is they anonymously track people and their movements throughout the store, how long they stop, and they recognize where people get all bunched up. Let's say at the deli counter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they'll use this to spread out the deli counter, know how many people to put there at a certain time, and then they'll take external data, which could be weather data, traffic data, seasonality for special events, and they'll have a much better way of planning their resources and their people resources.
Mm-hmm.
Another great use that I've seen is, typically when you do a cycle count at a retail store, you have a person counting the number of beans that are on the counter, okay, or in a certain part of a shelf. If the company isn't doing that themselves, what they'll have now is a autonomous robot which will go in there and essentially scan the shelf, do its best assessment that it possibly can,
Mhm.
The really cool part is when you add kind of this layer of IoT on it, which is these little micro sensors that understand when there's a stock out on bread, right?
Mhm.
And immediately when there's a certain velocity of a certain product where there's a stock out on the shelf, it'll immediately alert the people inside of the store, and it will make adjustments to even order more if it's kind of above the average of what they're doing. So
Right.
really cool stuff that they're doing here, and NVIDIA, right, is really the leader in we can say this statistically for training. There's a lot of competition outside there for the inference, whether it's CPU, but GPU based inference, NVIDIA dominates as well. So
Mhm.
cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, let's go to my favorite part of the show, and that is the acronym of the week, BOPUS. And without looking at the show notes, let me show you what BOPUS is. BOPUS is a minced lung, pork, carrots, and peppers. That's a Filipino dish. Now, why on
Mhm.
earth would we be talking about a pork and lung and heart product here on the Retail Tech Show?
Yeah, I mean, as delicious as that looks and sounds, BOPUS in retail tech is or in retail is actually buy online, pick up in store.
There we go.
BOPUS. So it's this is a lot of stores are encouraging this type of behavior, right? Because of e-commerce and people shopping online, especially due to the pandemic, so many people are used to buying online. But they also want to get people back into the store.
Yes.
And when people get back into the store, even if it's only just to arrive to pick up their goods, they're likely to increase the attached sales to like 20 to 25%. So say, you want that golf club and you're going to go down to Dick's and pick it up. When you get there, you're like, I probably need a new glove too, and maybe some balls, but you may not have thought of that when you're buying it. It also, it really decreases their shipping costs and the cost of returns. So it saves the store a lot of money. It increases the sort of cart size or their, what they call attached sales. Um, so I just thought that that was a really interesting acronym that would throw you off a bit because I know that's your favorite one. And, we kind of went through all the like KYC, AML, all the really obvious ones, but this one was just one that like, there was no way you were going to guess it.
Oh my gosh, I was watching speaking of KYC, I was watching Grok Day, and Grok is a competitor to NVIDIA for inference. And sure enough, one of their customers was talking about using AI for KYC. And I'm like, I know what that is. I learned that on the Fintech Friday show. So I was just so proud of myself.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, it's good. But you kind of threw me on the BOPUS. And of course, I'm going to do a Google search on it. And this fine heart and lung dish comes up. It's wonderful.
Right.
So,
It sort of is like the sister to Boss in retail, which is buy
okay.
online, ship to store. But I'm not really sure what the real hard designation of one or the other, but pickup in store definitely does, increase sales, and it gets people back into the stores.
Oh my gosh, I use it for Best Buy all the time.
Yeah.
And not for COVID, just because I want to know it's there and
Hmm.
I know what I want, and I'll go in and do that. And I think and when it comes to consumer electronics too, if it's a purchase, I personally want to see what I'm getting, right? I want to see if it's an open box, and it's like, no, 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 no. I didn't buy an open box.
Yeah.
I bought the full up good,
Yep.
and then I may not have thought about this as I'm purchasing online, a cable or
Hmm.
something and that in the end, I think what retail has discovered is, listen, I rather get something out of this, drive revenue, than let's say something from an Amazon warehouse, because Amazon with their 2 hour shipments
Hmm.
is definitely a competitor. I think the next thing I'd like to see is buy online and ship from the store, meaning let's have a courier or somebody send that to me. Otherwise, if it's at Amazon and I have no way to get there, I'm going to
Mhm.
buy it from Amazon and have them shipped to me from the warehouse that's south of Boston, and we have one north of Boston too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that, you're right. Like getting there and seeing the product before you take it home just feels, if it's a convenient, like, it's Best Buy, or if it's Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever it is, it's close by, it's convenient. You don't go through the, like, it arrives, it's broken, something's wrong with it. Now you've got to wait another 3 days for them to pick it up, bring you a new one. It really
Yeah,
does solve a lot of the friction from the consumer side and the retailer side. And then, if you're talking about something like clothing or anything, you can try it on right there. You immediately make the exchange. You might buy the accessory that goes with it. So it's going to
yeah.
increase the sales. So, um, yeah, that's the BOPUS, but it's not the Vietnamese dish. Although, maybe we should add a add a recipe element to our podcast and try that. You
I
go
love it.
first.
No, thanks. So, the wheel of retail and fintech never stops. What is coming up? What is on your radar?
So still a lot of so much happening in industry cloud. I think we've seen that, like, it's becoming a lot more prevalent, a lot more use cases for it, and now some data to show kind of the significance and the efficiency of it. So still doing some work on that. Another a couple of things actually have popped up recently on my radar. There's a couple of events coming up. InvestNet has their big conference coming up. Then student loan, the kind of how fintech is answering to the student loan debt issue, and the student loan forgiveness programs that are potentially coming to an end, and kind of seeing a lot of things pop up there, wanting to you know, weed out the good and the bad and see what's happening there. So we can talk about that on the next one. Another thing, which I actually was not in the notes, is Biden's his most recent budget proposal that included taxing unrealized gains, particularly on crypto.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a topic for discussion. I don't know if you saw much of that, but
Oh,
tax.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And every billionaire wincing
Yeah, well,
as
it's funny
well.
because
And
it's funny. The press will come out and say, "Oh, it's a billionaire tax." It's not actually a billionaire
I
tax. I
know.
think it's 100 million in assets, which, yes, $100 million is a lot of money, but it's when you think about paper money, not the actual currency, but money on paper. Like, think of how many, you know, sometimes 20-something-year-old people in Silicon Valley have $100 million in on paper, and that those could just be like options that haven't even been exercised. Under this bill, those could potentially be taxed. Like that's like financial ruin for somebody.
Well, it is. And here's the other thing. My biggest fear is that it incentivizes selling, right? Because if you're going to get taxed on it already, why not just dump it, right?
Right.
I'm afraid that you might have somebody who might have held on to investment for 4 or 5 years that just ends up dumping it,
Yeah.
and which is what I think we don't necessarily want. I mean, I know when I looked at back in the old days when we actually got stock options, not RSUs, because
Hmm.
RSUs you're paying that immediate delta between where it's at. You're paying that in taxes. I would sit on my options a heck of a lot longer than I would my RSUs, just because I'd already paid the tax. And if that sucker goes down, or it has some wild swing, or wild variation, or heck, I need to sell it just to pay the tax,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Which then creates an issue. So I think cooler heads will prevail on this
Yeah.
thing.
That
And
that's kind of my feeling, is that, when something like that is introduced, it's basically Biden's wish list. And,
yeah,
he's got others to answer to when it comes to this. But I think the other thing that it incentivizes, Pat, is that there are still ways to anonymously hold crypto. And the government is on one hand trying to get away from that, make sure that crypto assets are KYC'd and that we know, who, like the travel rule and all of that. We know where the money came from, who it belongs to, and how it can be tracked. So, but if you now are saying, well, we're going to tax you even on the unrealized gains on something that goes like this, like it's up and
Oh my
down, it's all
gosh.
over the place. How are you going to tax that? I mean, that's absurd. But it also really it incentivizes hiding those assets
It
in an
does.
asset class that still is possible.
It's funny. I just don't see a scenario where the government, under the auspice of terrorism and money laundering, aren't going to want to get in here and manage this. I can't even imagine that scenario
Yeah.
happening. I mean, China basically um, outlawed crypto until they can come up with their own version. It's probably a positive thing for them to get away from the gold standard and the U.S. standard as a kind of targeting for currency. But I haven't even come up with a scenario that says it's not highly regulated. I really haven't.
Yeah, it has to be. And I think the smart players in the crypto space are, coming forward with that and suggesting their own regulations and kind of coming up with a set of rules that works that, can be um, enforced, government enforced, but still kind of provides that same utility that the cryptocurrencies were, created and blockchain was created to begin
Yeah,
with. So you're right. It has to be. And I think, now with sort of Wall Street's love affair with cryptocurrency at the moment, I think we'll have more participation on that from like the more, safe players, right? That they'll have some say. They definitely clearly, have a lot of lobbying power and they have a lot of say in what happens. So it'll there's so much happening in terms of regulation and crypto and all of that will, ultimately it will shake out. A lot of the like Coinbase and some of the, the big kind of players in crypto
right.
just kind of shook their heads and didn't even comment on this latest bill proposal. So
Yeah, I mean, listen, you don't want to be in the crosshairs one way or the other. And when there's regime change, even in the U.S., right? There's history and who said what and who supported what. So I
yeah,
think if I were in their position, I wouldn't say anything either. I mean, unless it was an absolute definitive train wreck that would kill my company. And
right.
I think they would have spoken up if they thought it was an existential threat.
Absolutely.
So they haven't. So
Yeah.
Mel, here we are, an extended fintech and retail tech Friday. Sorry, I bailed on you. Last Friday. I need to do a better job. When something comes up. Um, my
That's
my
okay.
yeah, my calendar is a nightmare, but this is my favorite time of the week. Fridays are great. This is my third podcast today, so I am super energetic, and it's a great way to close out the day. So
It is
thanks for
great.
everything.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you had fun at Dell Match Play. I don't blame you for bailing on Fintech Friday for Dell Match Play.
It was so good. I'm not a huge golf fan. I just sat in the shade, talked to folks from Dell. I even bumped into other of our clients like Intel. I mean, it was great. Got to meet almost the entire Dell senior leadership team up at the event, which was worth the price of admission. Actually, the price of admission was free, so it was worth a lot more than that. So I want to thank Dell for that incredible entry ticket on that, and hopefully we'll see. I did tell everybody there that I only begged to go to one show, and that's F1 paddock tickets.
Yeah,
I'm so excited. There's two this year, and there's going to be opening up to Vegas next year. So I'm super excited about that.
nice.
I know. So hey, thanks for tuning in for FinTech and Retail Tech Friday. If you liked what you heard, let us know. Hit that subscribe button. Mel and I are both on Twitter. We love constructive feedback. Let us know what you hear next time. So for that, have a great weekend. We appreciate you tuning in. Take care.